Hello, I'm Robin. Welcome to Bookspin. The Anomaly by Hervé Tellier. Published originally in French in 2020. This is the English translation, copyright 2021. So this book caused quite a buzz after it was released. It won the prestigious Prix Goncourt in 2020. And it went on to become an international bestseller. But the real draw for me, when I first heard about this book, was in its premise. It's got a very intriguing sci-fi premise. So I'll come on to that in a minute. Anyway, I wasn't at all disappointed. As a sci-fi mystery thriller, this certainly delivers. It's clever, it's thought-provoking, it's mind-twisting even. But it's also much more than that, I think. The writing is incredibly poignant and witty, and the characters are fascinating. And there are plenty of deep philosophical themes to sink your teeth into. So I would say this is definitely one of my reading highlights so far this year, and probably going to be one of my top reads of 2025, I expect. So, what is this book about? Well, it's set in the present day. It's actually 2021, but near enough. And the whole plot centers around a single bizarre mystery involving a transatlantic passenger flight from Paris to New York. But long before we get to this event, the author spends quite a long time, I think it's a good third of the book or so, just building up the characters, who for the most part are the passengers on board the plane, although there are a few other characters as well. And it's a pretty diverse bunch. They're all unique and quite fascinating in their own way. So, for example, we've got an unsuccessful French writer. We've got a contract killer on board. We've got a Nigerian pop singer. And we've also got a probability mathematician. These are just some of the characters. There's a whole lot more of them, actually. It's quite a big cast. Some would say too big. That is one criticism I've seen in other reviews of this book. But I actually think the author pulls it off pretty well. They're all compelling characters. And I think he successfully creates an intimate portrayal of each individual in just a few pages. I think he does it really well. So each of these characters has some interesting or unique quality. Many of them live colourful lives, or they have dysfunctional relationships, or they're stuck in some kind of tragic situation, this kind of thing. So we get introduced to these people in turn. We learn a bit about them and their lives, and at first it's not at all clear where this story is heading. The only thing that these people have in common is they're all on board on this flight. They all board this mysterious flight in March 2021. Okay, and this is where things start to get really interesting. And this is where the science fiction finally kicks in. So, shortly before the plane reaches its destination, they enter a big storm, a terrifying storm. They experience the mother of all turbulence, and then something incredibly weird happens. The plane emerges from the storm and duplicates. Not only does it duplicate, but it duplicates in two different timelines. So the first plane lands in New York in March 2021 as expected, but then another plane, another version of the same plane with exactly the same passengers and crew arrives in June 2021, 3 months later. So the people on board this second plane, they think they're still in March. Okay? So we've got this kind of inexplicable time jump on top of this already inexplicable duplication. Now, I don't want to go too much further into any plot specifics, but as you might expect, this leads to all kinds of confusion and repercussions. No one knows what's going on. Air traffic control don't know how to respond at first. The world leaders don't know how to react. Scientists, experts don't understand how this event can be explained or interpreted. But that doesn't stop people putting forward theories, all kinds of wild theories, to hypothesize about what happened, including a wormhole theory and some bizarre theory involving a giant bioprinted photocopy machine and simulated reality. So for some reason, the simulation hypothesis seems to gain the most traction as people interpret this event, this plane duplication, as evidence that we're living in a simulated reality. So you can imagine all a kind of existential angst that follows from this conclusion. But of course, the most profound consequences of this whole event is on the passengers and the crew themselves, who each find themselves with a carbon copy of themselves that now exists in this world. So they have to learn what their relationship is with their double and how to live with this new reality. It's a bit of a head scratcher. So you can kind of imagine this yourself, right? Imagine that you are married to someone on board that plane. You're not on the plane yourself, but your wife or your husband is on the plane. 3 months down the line, your spouse is duplicated. So they're an exact copy. It's the same person with the same memories. So this double appears out of nowhere. Are they still your partner? Is this the same person? Or are these two different people? Are they both your partners? Is that even possible? And what are you going to do? Are you going to stay together with both of them? Does that even work? Is that fair? And if not, who are you going to separate with? Who do you stay with? And for the person who gets left behind, what are they going to do with their lives now? So we've got all these kind of questions we have to deal with. And this story is full of these kind of interesting personal thought experiments and philosophical dilemmas that get explored. And I think it's really fascinating. So, yeah, it's quite philosophical in tone. A lot of interesting themes get explored. Identity, selfhood, ethics and morality, politics and religion. All of these things get explored. And of course, ultimately, what it means to be human. So it's a very thought-provoking novel. But more than that, I think the quality of the writing is excellent. Hervé Tellier somehow manages to weave these complex themes with this large cast of characters who are all well developed, I think. And he creates a really engaging speculative thriller that's full of poignancy and some great humorous touches as well. I think that the humour and the wit in this novel is exceptional. So I can see why this is so critically acclaimed. I can't speak for the original French text, of course, but I will say that this feels like a very seamless translation. In any case, it's got me interested to explore more of Le Tellier's work. I had never heard of him before I encountered this novel. He's not really known as an SF writer. I think this is, as far as I know, the first of his books to contain any kind of speculative elements, but I need to look into that. So yeah, if you've read any more of this author's work, please let me know in the comments if there's anything you'd recommend. But in any case, I think The Anomaly was a joy to read. I never felt bored when reading it. But that said, I think it would be remiss of me not to mention just one small gripe I had with this novel. It's not a big deal, but I think I ought to mention it. There are some sections of this book in which real life characters get introduced into the story. And in my opinion, I don't think it works very well. Okay, so we have, for example, Xi Jinping and Emmanuel Macron. They get inserted into the story, not in a big way, but they're there, and it feels kind of weird to me. It kind of breaks the suspension of disbelief. Now, I'm trying to think of some other examples where I've come across this in fiction. I think you can get away with it with historical characters to some extent, with famous historical figures. So, for example, this is a big part of the Riverworld series by Philip Jose Farmer. And I think it kind of works in that context. But when you introduce present-day political figures and they pop up in the story, and these people are very much in office today, they're very much part of our world, it feels kind of incongruous to me. You know, part of the reason I enjoy reading, and I enjoy reading science fiction, is escapism. And, you know, if I want to see Xi Jinping or Donald Trump, I can just turn on the news. I don't need them getting involved in the book I'm reading. Okay? So that's my small complaint. It's not a big part of the novel, but I feel like I should mention it. Overall, though, this is a fantastic read. Okay? It's mind-bending, it's well-written, and it's exceptionally entertaining. So I'm going to give The Anomaly 4.5 stars. Highly recommended. That is all for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more science fiction content.